The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. It truly is a pleasure. I'm not just paying lip service to that statement. It is a pleasure to be doing the show this week because we got ourselves a fine program. We are just chock full of some pretty cool content for the next hour, and I'm just tickled pink to have y'all along for the ride. It's going to be a blast. Coming up in the second segment, got a really great interview for you. We're going to be joined by country singer-songwriter Jessica Lynn. I'm excited for this interview for a number of reasons. One, as I've come to find out in preparing for this interview for the last couple weeks, Jessica Lynn, terrific indie country artist, makes amazing music, great sound, great look, a lot that indie artists can learn from just what she brings to the table on the creative side. But it doesn't end there. The other thing that Jessica Lynn does that I think is really, really cool, that I think a lot of other indie artists can learn from, is what she does on the public service side. Because when it comes to giving back to this country, giving back to the people who have fought for this country, who defend our freedoms, Jessica Lynn is all about that life. She works with Armed Forces Entertainment. She works with the Department of State's American Voices program. She works with veterans groups. She helps our wounded warriors using the power of music. And so, frankly, I'm interested in learning how she got into that work, how other artists can do that kind of work, and selfishly, I'd kind of like to learn how I can do some of that kind of stuff. I've always been interested in wanting to try to help my fellow Americans, help my fellow world citizens, and she does a lot of that work. I believe she even teaches a course that she built on being an indie creator that she teaches all around the world through this Department of State program. So she's going to have a lot of great advice for us, and I'd love to learn from her about how she, some of the advice that she gives to others, and it's going to be great. The point is, we're going to all want to stick around and hear from Jessica Lynn in the second segment and just continue to make friends with her and get to enjoy her music long after this interview is over. But before we get to that, we got lots of great stuff even before that interview. This first segment, viewers and listeners, is kind of wild. I like how this first segment came together. We're doing things a little different this week with our first segment. Normally with the first segment, we have one of our rotating crew of co-hosts come in. One of our co-hosts come in. We talk about stuff going on in the industry. But things sort of happened with the show rundown this week in terms of potential topics that we're going to talk about. And instead of bringing in a single co-host, what I'm going to do is you're going to hear from a couple different voices in the legal field about what I think are some of the more interesting entertainment law-related topics that I think are important for indie artists. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is getting us back to our show's roots. As producer Lauren reminded me just before we started the show this week, Break the Business is entering its 10th year. We started this show in August of 2015. We are now entering 2025. I cannot believe it. Where does the time go? But when we started this show, it was pretty law-focused. I was early in my legal career. I wanted to share legal insights, and I think I knew more about the law at that time than I did about being an indie creator. And so there was a lot of entertainment law in each episode. And so I feel like this week we're kind of getting back to our roots by really kind of digging into some of the entertainment law stuff that's going on right now. And to do that, we got two pretty terrific legal minds that are going to be joining us to talk about some stories. First, and so the topics we're going to talk about in the first segment here, which I think are both very important topics for indie creators, are copyrights and memes on the internet. And the second topic is the parents of child celebrities getting trademarks in their kids' names and what the legal implications of that are and what are some of the policy discussion points around it. So it's pretty cool stuff. You're going to love digging into it. And so for the first topic about copyrights and memes on the internet, I'm going to bring out our first lawyer that we're talking to this week from Five Bridges Law. Great follow on X and TikTok. One of my favorite lawyers out there. Mark Jaffe is joining us. Hi, Mark.
How you doing, Ryan?
I am doing so well. The fact that it took me this long to have you on this program is just criminal. We're addressing this, and by having you on now, Mark, I want to talk to you about I would say, like, if you were making a Hall of Fame of internet memes, this one's getting in on the first ballot. The Success Kid meme. Producer Lauren, I'm sure many people know what Success Kid is. There it is when I say it. But for the uninitiated and for the viewers out there, that Success Kid, many people know the meme. Even if you didn't think you knew the meme, once you see the picture, you know who Success Kid is. The kid eating the sand, who's doing the little fist bump, and a lot of people use that picture as a meme to celebrate one of life's small victories. But recently, the topic of the copyrightability of memes came into focus amid some recent developments in a case involving conservative Congressman Steve King, who in his 2020 congressional campaign used the Success Kid meme in one of his fundraising messages. And the parents of Success Kid, who owned the copyright to that photograph, sued. And, for the most part, I believe the parents have been successful in the copyright litigation, but the former Congressman Steve King is now appealing the copyright case all the way to the Supreme Court, which is where it lies now. And it's a great it really brings about this interesting question of, can memes be copyrighted? Can people who create memes prevent others from using those memes? Can you update us on the case, Mark? Where is that case right now?
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. So the boy you saw in the photograph, his name is Sam Griner. Turns out he wasn't celebrating his success. He was about to eat sand. His parents caught the photo, and other people took their interpretation of it. His mother took the photo. Her name is Lainey Griner. Every time I talk about this case, sometimes I'll make a mistake and say Brittany. So just correct me if I do. So Lainey Griner took the photograph, and she claimed to own the copyright and made it available to many others. Your question was where this case is now. Steve King is petitioning the United States Supreme Court to hear the case. He having lost at trial, but the plaintiff, Lainey Griner, in the copyright case only got an award of $4,500. So he is seeking review by the Supreme Court on two separate issues. One would go to the actual copyright nature of it. That would be whether or not he has the implied license. The other is an important procedural issue, which we might not get into. I think this is one he really wants, where he, despite losing, has put forth a legal argument where he would get his attorney's fees from the plaintiffs.
That attorney's fees question is actually a pretty interesting one, and definitely does have some implications for the way that people settle copyright lawsuits. But I want to look at this more globally, because I think a lot of people are hearing me talk about this case and the idea of somebody actually owning a meme, and that meme actually being the subject of a copyright suit. And maybe it's making some of the viewers and listeners out there nervous, because we all share memes. We talk about memes. We post memes on the internet. Are we all going to be in trouble, I guess, is my question, Mark. Is everybody on the internet a potential copyright defendant because of the way that memes are just so freely shared?
Right. And the answer is no and yes. And
that's a great lawyer
based
answer.
on that. No and yes. Steve King was at particular risk because he used a photograph of a child for his political campaign. And Steve King, a former congressman from Iowa, is really known for two things, one being racist and the other being very racist. So he, enough that the Republicans stripped him of committee leadership when he started to complain that white nationalist was being used in a negative manner, which is all part of the complaint. So the copyright holder, Lainey Griner, was selective in choosing him because she was offended by the use, and it was a political use. It was used to raise funds for his reelection campaign. An issue the issue that's going to the Supreme Court, or the one that he wants to go to the Supreme Court, is whether or not Griner gave an implied license essentially to the world.
Yeah, that's interesting, and perhaps that if the Supreme Court is sympathetic to that argument, which, as I understand it, is sort of if you make a meme generally available for people on the internet and you don't try to like stop people from using it, Steve King's going to argue that it's implied that you've kind of licensed to the world the ability to use this meme and you can't stop them. Am I kind of on the right track? And what do you think the court's going to think of that argument?
That's right. The district court did not agree.
Yeah.
The district court, what he's using is implied license. Now, whether or not the photograph itself was protected by copyright, whether or not Laney Griner was creative enough in creating the photograph, that was an issue in the lawsuit, but that's not the one where he's challenging to the Supreme Court. He's specifically targeting this implied license. An implied license is where you didn't give somebody a written license, or you didn't say, magic words if you have a license to the copyright, but the circumstances surrounding the relationship suggests that there wasn't a license. I should disclose that I'm litigating a copyright case now where implied license is an issue, but that one's very straightforward. So, for instance, between you and I, you asked me to come on the show. I said I'd come on the show and talk. To the extent that I would even claim copyright in the recording of my speaking today, I'm giving you the license. But it would be reasonable to assume that you had an implied license by my agreeing to be on the show. You told me where it's going to be aired and when, and I did not say no.
Sure.
Right? That would be circumstances where it would be reasonable to find an implied license. What Griner argued, and the court seemed to accept, is that an implied license exists where there is what contract law calls a meeting of the minds. Some type of knowledge between the person granting the implied license and the other person. Something that transpired between the other person that would let them know that they had a license, or like the situation, or the situation like us, where you told me what you were going to do with it. I'm the recipient, not the world.
Right.
Or you, in this case, would be the recipient of the implied license. What Steve King has argued, and it's not a frivolous argument, by the way, was that by putting that photograph out there and allowing lots of people to create memes from the photograph and not stopping people from making memes of the photograph, you've essentially given an implied license to everyone. And the fact that that was rejected, I know you say, is going to make people concerned about the way they use their memes. So I should qualify it in some respects. The court said that's not how an implied license works. Courts are not unanimous on this issue. That's why Steve King is seeking review at the Supreme Court. They did monetize photographs of Sam Griner. They did license it for commercial gain to certain circumstances. So there were facts that suggested that even if we could accept an implied license by granting it to the world, it doesn't exist here.
So there was some evidence in this case that they were kind of policing their meme copyright a little bit.
Yes. And in case people are wondering, when someone owns a copyright, there's no basis under copyright law that essentially precludes somebody from being selective in their enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Copyright law you don't lose a copyright. You don't abandon a copyright, which was another one of King's arguments. But it's very hard to abandon a copyright.
Yeah.
Implied license in this context, it actually made some kind of sense, but I don't think but the argument of giving an implied license to the world, the court held it wasn't buttressed by some facts, and it's just not typically the way we understand implied license. This may or may not apply to anybody's use of other common memes, because those might have been uploaded by copyright holders, by the people who took the photographs, to certain websites. And if you're using any one of those websites, you might want to check the terms of use of them that show you how to, that show you what you have permission to do and not do. Anytime you're going to use it for commercial gain, if you're reselling it, if you're using it for advertising, I think anybody's in greater risk when they use it for advertising. I want to say one more thing. I know you want to ask, but even if there's no copyright issue, so many of these memes have depict individuals. So you're looking at a right of publicity of the individual, which is going to be triggered when you use them for advertising.
So this is definitely a case worth monitoring, and these are thoughts that all creators should have in their head when they're looking to use memes, whether it's a joke on social media, which probably you have more legal leeway to do as opposed to like putting it on a t-shirt or trying to monetize it or use it in a political campaign. This is really, really interesting stuff, and definitely will want to keep an eye on it. But before we let you go, Mark, can you tell folks where they can find you online so they can enjoy you on social media just as much as I do?
Sure. You mentioned Twitter. I'm not whatever X, whatever. I haven't been posting, to that in over a year. The account still exists. I'm still on TikTok if it sticks around.
For now,
making some videos. I'm preparing for a trial next week, so I haven't done a lot, but I did talk about the Success Good case. Those videos are also available on YouTube, where fewer people watch them. And I'm taking all the things I used to do to Twitter to Blue Sky and sometimes Threads. See me on Blue Sky and look at the Five Bridges Law website, which has links to all of these where you can find more about my practice and my representation of creatives and their creative endeavors.
that's marvelous. Mark, always a pleasure. Don't be a stranger. Love to have you on again
Thank you,
real
Ryan.
soon. Absolutely. And let's keep these cool legal topics going. So we talked a lot on this show in past episodes about child celebrities and the different laws that exist to protect them. Laws that, you've seen some jurisdictions that have talked about creating laws to make sure that child influencers can get a percentage of their earnings when they turn 18 and their parents don't just hoard the money. Well, recently, we have another example of these kind of laws that could potentially protect child celebrities. Recently in the Houston Law Review, law professor Alexandra Roberts wrote about a potential danger in trademark law where parents might register a trademark for their celebrity child's name without giving that child an ability to get that trademark back once they turn 18, once they grow up. Here to talk more about the article is Professor of Law and Media at Northeastern University Law School and a super excellent social media follow, Alexandra Roberts. Hi, Professor.
Hi, great to see you.
Great to be chatting. Normally, Alexandra, someone has to consent to their name being used as a trademark. I've done trademark filings of people's names, and you always have to add that little extra document where the person signs a form saying, hey, I'm cool with you using my name for this trademark. But the trademark office, from what I understand, allows parents to consent on their child's behalf when registering a trademark in their child's name?
That's right. So the Lanham Act, which is the federal trademark statute, does require that if you're going to register something that's the name or nickname or image of somebody else, it requires their written consent. But if that person is a minor, not only is their own consent not required, but their own consent wouldn't be good enough. You need the consent of their parent or guardian. So that means that whether it's minors who are actors, musicians, influencers, athletes, celebrities, or whether it's like the babies of celebrities, right? You Stormy Jenner, Blue Ivy Carter, or really anybody else who's registering their child's name or nickname, the parent can do all of that. They can file the application. They can consent to their own registration of somebody else's name.
And one thing that all children eventually do one day is grow up. They turn 18. They want to be able to have control over their lives, and including the brand in which their name is endowed. And your article talks about legal mechanisms of what happens when that child turns 18. So is there a legal mechanism right now for children to revoke that consent once they turn 18 and get their name trademarked back when they become adults? My understanding, the law here is kind of muddy right now, right?
It's a little bit muddy, but frankly, there's really no way to do that. There's no mechanism in place. It hasn't been tested very frequently. But I think the Luka Doncic story kind of brought attention to this issue, even though he wasn't technically a minor. So he's
talk about this one because this is wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So his mom applied to register Luka Doncic 7 as a trademark with his signed consent. He was 19 years old. So not a minor, but pretty young, pretty green, right? And then his career just totally took off. He got endorsement deals with major companies. He applied to register his own marks, and the USPTO refused them, right? The USPTO said, oh, your use of Luka Doncic will create a likelihood of confusion with this other registration that belongs to your mom, right? And he was like, that's not what I want anymore. So he sent a letter in which he purported to revoke consent and petitioned to cancel his mom's registration. And he made a lot of compelling arguments, I think, right? So the same portions
Up
of
to
the
and including,
statute,
I'm Luka Doncic.
yeah. So the same portions of the statute that say, like, you can't create a false association with somebody, you can't kind of imply their endorsement without their consent. He essentially said, I don't consent anymore. So now you are creating false association, false endorsement, likelihood of confusion. It's a violation of my right of publicity, right? And in essence, it's false advertising because there's merchandise out there with my name on it. This registration exists. And yet, that's not what I want. It doesn't benefit me. I'm not the person standing behind those products. I want to sell different products and I want to own a different registration. So we did not get to see the USPTO take action on that petition because ultimately the two of them worked it out. The mom transferred the registration to him so that his applications could go through because they had the same owner. But it really led me to say, this is going to keep happening with these child celebrities, with these children celebrities, right? Because you wake up one day, you're Stormy Jenner and you're a makeup brand, right? You're a brand of cosmetics that's named for you. And you might be 12 or 15 and say, I don't want to be a makeup brand. That's not consistent with my values. That's maybe abhorrent to things that I believe in. Or you might say, looks like my parents have been profiting off of my name for a really long time. And maybe they're not even setting aside anything for me from that business endeavor. And maybe that's not right either. Like, I might want to be the face or the name of a makeup brand that I control and I profit from. So the idea that there's really no mechanism to revoke consent, even if you weren't sympathetic to Luka Doncic because he was an adult, I think I would expect a lot of sympathy for these children who just had no say in the registration at all.
And so what would be, what does your article talk about in terms of proposed reforms? Like, are you looking at some kind of reversion type thing where once one of these children turns 18, they have the ability to petition to the trademark office to revoke that consent and get their rights back so that they can register their own trademark?
Yeah, I think that's one way to do it. I think there are, frankly, a lot of great options and ways to kind of remedy what seems problematic here, right? So the most dramatic would be a flat prohibition on marks that reference a minor. We could say, listen, you can register the name of an individual, but you can't register the name of a specific minor. That's just not allowed. But there are a lot of less dramatic versions of that. So we could allow the minor to revoke the consent, cancel the registration at any time up to the age of majority and for a short window after. And that actually kind of resembles what happens in contract law, right? Where you can't bind a minor, the contract is voidable by them. Another thing could be to require affirmation of consent when the minor reaches the age of majority. And if they don't affirm that consent, the registration would be deemed abandoned and canceled. You could require renewed consent by the minor at standard registration renewals. So that's something that happens naturally with trademark registrations. So every company that owns a registration has to, 5 years after the registration and every 10 years after that, has to file some paperwork, attest to the fact that they continue to use the mark in commerce and submit a specimen of how they're using it. So it wouldn't be too complicated to say, because this is the name of somebody who was a minor at the time of registration, you're going to need to now submit their consent. Another thing would be to only allow these registrations if they are owned by the minor. And to the extent that a minor is not allowed to own a registration, there's a way to configure it such that the parent or guardian is the registrant until the minor turns 18, and then it's automatically transferred to them. Those are all kind of USPTO policy tweaks that would be possible. I think there are also things that parents can do better, right? And there are also ways to use contract law outside of the trademark registration process to improve that situation and make sure we don't get these bad outcomes that I'm concerned about.
This is really, really interesting. To me, it's sort of the trademark laws equivalent of the Coogan laws that they have in California that protect child actors by taking a piece of that child actor income and putting it in a trust account so that that actor can have, some of what money they've earned when they turn 18, or some of the laws that you're seeing emerging in some jurisdictions now with kid influencers, where if a parent has a child who's an influencer, they have to take some of that money that the kid is earning and put it in a trust. And so this is the same kind of idea, right? This is a brand that has value, and this is a mechanism that could potentially allow that child to participate in that value, or at least have some say over that value when they're old enough to make their own decisions. This seems pretty common sense to me. I can't imagine anybody out there, maybe other than like Macaulay Culkin's parents, who think that this wouldn't be a good idea. I mean, is this stuff that could just be done by edict with like the USPTO, or would these things require an act of Congress, some of these reforms that you're talking about?
Some of them I think would just be considered procedural changes, and so they could be done unilaterally by the USPTO. Some of them, if they're viewed as more substantive, might require notice and comment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then the administrative agency is going to hear from different stakeholders, making different arguments about the right way to proceed, or why they think this change is harmful, right? And then maybe the most dramatic option could have to be something that Congress takes care of. But I agree with you. So we've got more and more and more child celebrities and we're seeing them in more spaces. So previously, maybe it was mostly actors and musicians. Now we've got influencers, we've got reality TV stars, we've got this whole kind of range. And the different laws that you mentioned, those are really about preventing exploitation, because we've seen so many examples of these child actors being exploited by parents and by guardians, and finding after so much work over their young lifetime that there's nothing set aside for them, right? So I think this is just kind of an area that's been overlooked, where we could see some similar changes that reflect those policy goals.
Now, much like our friend Mark Jaffe, who we heard from earlier, you're a pretty fantastic follow on social media as well. I don't know if you're on TikTok like Mark is. If we could make that happen, with the 10 days of TikTok that we have left, I feel like you could do a lot of great things on that platform in a week and a half. But where can people find you right now on social media?
Yeah, thanks for the compliment. I am Lex Lanham, so Lex, and then it's Lanham, which is a reference to the Lanham Act, the federal trademark statute that I've been talking about, and I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky.
There are a precious few number of law professors that this podcast host would recommend taking the time to follow. And perhaps that's just a product of my own trauma being on the receiving end of instruction from law professors. But Alexandra is definitely one of the ones you want to hear from. And I'm sure Alexandra is going to come to the defense of many of her colleagues and say, oh, no, there's other good ones to follow, too. But they're not here and you are. So I'm going to talk about how much I enjoy hearing from you on social media. And I very much enjoyed hearing from you on this podcast. So thank you so much for your time this week, Professor.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
You bet. Oh, boy, I'm feeling good now. Those were two really good, awesome lawyer conversations. But unlike most conversations that you have with lawyers, one, that didn't cost us a fortune, which is nice. And two, don't you come out of that feeling invigorated? Because those two lawyers are interesting and they're fun to talk to, and you don't feel bored after a long discussion with them. So I'm happy to bring those two for you. And I hope in the future we can bring them on more often, because they are an absolute blast. I have so much respect for Mark, and I have so much respect for Professor Roberts, and I'm so glad that they joined us this week. All right, we're going to take a quick break and keep the great conversations going after the break with our guest, Jessica Lynn. So don't go anywhere. Keep checking out Break the Business. We'll be right back. Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan Kairalla, PA. Ryan Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Break the Business, you lovely humans. Ryan Kairalla here, just having a grand old time. But before we bring in our guest, I want to do what I usually do during this time and just extend a wide net of gratitude to all of you for continuing to support this program. As we mentioned earlier, this is our 10th year doing Break the Business, and we exist because of your love and your support and you staying with us and, you having us grow from being this, little tin can podcast that I recorded in my parents' spare bedroom back in 2015 to this, massive cool thing that we have on volume.com and SiriusXM. And it's been a blast having you on this journey. So wherever you're checking us out, I'm glad that you are. Whether it's on volume.com or on Twitch or on our podcast platforms or on SiriusXM 145, much love to Slam Radio. We're just so grateful that you found us. And, I don't ask for anything in return, but if you're feeling generous in any way, I would say if there's anything that you could do to support this program, it would be as simple as throwing us a nice review on whatever podcast platform you review things on. And if you feel so inclined, tell a friend about what we're doing around here. Have them join our community. Email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com to let us know about show topics you want us to talk about, questions you want us to answer, so that we can continue to enrich this community and bring in more awesome voices to share with all of you. And speaking of awesome voices to share with you, viewers and listeners, let's go ahead and bring out our guest this week.
From the heart of the country where the wildflowers bloom, Jessica Lynn brings a light to the room, helping our heroes with the stories they tell. In every note, she's casting her spell, breaking the business with a heart full of grace. Jessica Lynn bringing hope to this place. For our veterans, she stands strong and true, with a song in her heart and a dream to pursue.
Our guest this week is an acclaimed country singer-songwriter whose latest album, All I Own, drops on January 17th. Our guest is also a veterans advocate working with organizations like Armed Forces Entertainment and the Department of State's American Voices program. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting jessicalynmusic.org. We are happy to welcome Jessica Lynn on to Break the Business. Hi, Jessica.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I am overjoyed to have you. I am so excited for this conversation. Got to start with this, Jessica. You have performed with some of the biggest names in country music. And so I'm curious, what was the one artist that you found yourself sharing a stage with that made you go the most, man, how did I get here?
That's an easy one. So I grew up being a huge Richard Marx fan. My first concert when I was 5 years old was Richard Marx. And I remember being there with my little sister, and we were the only small kids in the audience and waving, and he waved back, and it was like the best day of my life. So fast forward to 2020, it's actually a funny story. He was coming to a venue near me, and I was able to get his contact through someone that I knew that used to work at Sony Music. And I was like, I'm going to try to open for him. I mean, that would be a dream come true, but oh man, what is the likelihood that this is even still his email, that he would even answer me? But I said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I'm just going to go for it. And worst comes to worst, I don't get it. I sent an email. I was so nervous. Like, I'm such a big fan. I'd love to open for you if you had anyone. And he sends me back the nicest email saying, I checked out your music. I really like it. Of course, I have you open for me. And I remember just screaming and running in circles. Like, I can't believe he actually answered. So it was such a pinch me moment to be standing on that stage opening and looking next to me, and he's in the wings like
Oh man.
I'll never forget it. I mean, some of my earliest memories of music are his music, and that was a very surreal experience. And I got a little teary eyed backstage watching him perform. Like, wow, I've worked so hard to get here, and here I am with Richard Marx. This is really something.
I can imagine. And that is an incredible story, though I will say kind of an upset in terms of what I predicted. Like I'm thinking about, okay, who is Jessica Lynn going to say is the artist that made her go, how did I get here? And it not be a country artist? I mean, look, nobody's hating on you for picking Richard Marx. Richard Marx is a damn national treasure and,
He is.
and like great answer, but I'm surprised by that. Like, I mean, how much of like your creative persona isn't just like straight country, but you cast a wider net.
My roots are rock and roll. They really are. When I was a kid, I played in a rock and roll band. My first band I started when I was 13, and I was writing all rock and roll music. It was very much like No Doubt style. And I grew up on Journey, AC/DC, big rock bands. And but I always loved country too. And now my music is definitely a blend, but my live show is a straight rock and roll, high energy performance.
I dig that. And God, so here's my struggle with you, Jessica, is I do want to ask you a lot of questions about like what you do as an artist and your album and everything. But when I look at what you do on the public service side of things, I feel like I'd be doing myself and the viewers and listeners a huge disservice by not going deep into that, because that is what you do for the veterans, for the State Department as an ambassador of sorts is really, really interesting. So I got to steer things in that direction. First, can you tell us a bit about the work that you do with Armed Forces Entertainment? Because this seems really cool.
Sure. So I've always been a big fan of giving back. My whole childhood, me and my mom and my sister, every single weekend, volunteered at animal shelters, walking the dogs. I volunteered on farms my whole life. Some of my earliest gigs are at nursing homes and children's hospitals. And I just always strongly believe that when you have a platform and you have a voice, no pun intended, to use it for good. And that's been kind of the motto of my whole career. My early television specials, I gave proceeds of ticket sales to veterans organizations. I've worked with so many groups that it honestly would probably take me the whole episode to name them. But I was very excited that this past year I signed a contract with Armed Forces Entertainment to provide military entertainment. And my first gig was this past 4th of July at Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, wow. Whoa. Okay.
It was
pretty close to our neck of the woods down here in South Florida, but
it was an amazing experience. It was once in a lifetime. I mean, how many people get to say that they got to go there, and not only got to go there, but got to see a lot of call it top secret stuff. We couldn't take photos or video, obviously, but really that was also kind of a pinch me moment. Like, wow, who would have ever thought I would be here at Guantanamo Bay?
What got you interested in wanting to work with veterans specifically? Is there a personal story there, perhaps?
I feel very well. First, both my grandfathers are veterans. We know a lot of veterans personally. My dad is a retired police officer. So I have a lot of respect for people that put themselves, in harm's way to protect the rest of us. Probably from growing up with a police officer father too, is where that came from. But just very grateful. I think I've traveled to a lot of countries, and being an American is a really beautiful thing. And the freedom that we have here is something to not take for granted. And there is a reason that we have that freedom. So I always remember that.
It's truly commendable, and amazed by the work that you do, not just as a musician in terms of like entertaining the troops, entertaining the veterans, but what you do sort of as a goodwill ambassador, as a teacher. Just to let the viewers and listeners know, you work with the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, where I believe you teach a course that you created called Tips and Tricks for the Independent Musician. You teach this course around the world. That is so cool. Tell us about this.
So back in 2019, I was on tour in Lithuania, and I was playing a large festival out there, and the U.S. Embassy had a booth at the festival. And when I had gone to say hello, we had been in Europe for 3 months at that point, and I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to go meet the Americans that are here at this booth and speak English." So I go and I meet them, and they're like, "We read your bio. I actually have a master's degree in education and special education, and I have a bachelor's degree in math and adolescent education." And they said, "You would be so perfect for this program that the State Department does, where you not only perform, but you also educate and you share music and with people around the world." And I was like, "That sounds interesting." And they emailed me right after the festival the link to apply. And I've been employed ever since. First as just a musician. Then they hired me as a consultant to the program because of all of my international touring experience, as well as just being an entrepreneur. I've booked all of my world tours, and I've done all the logistics and the behind the scenes and all that stuff. So that was very cool. And we actually held our meetings every week in VR, which was awesome.
Really? Like,
Yeah.
like you use like the Meta headsets, or
Yes. Yeah.
really?
Every week I met with the government in a different coffee shop in person, I'll
See,
say.
big
in
fan. I
quotes.
have mine right here. Look at that. There's
Yeah.
my Meta headset.
So that was really a fun experience. And then that went really well. And then they decided to move me over to also their education department. So I created a course called Tips and Tricks for the Indie Musician, where I teach artists around the world how to build your social media, how to book your own tours, how to do your distribution. I mean, from A to Z. And I've taught in, I think, 16 countries now, and I've had students age 15 to about 50.
That's incredible. I didn't even know something like this existed until I read about you. The idea of teaching people about the music industry, not just being empowering for its own sake, but the idea of it kind of acting as a force for peace and spreading American goodwill throughout the world. I mean, what an amazing feeling it must be for you to be able to use your knowledge and your expertise in that way. Can you share with us, like, what's one of your favorite tips from your Tips and Tricks for the Independent Musician course?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, building your social media is always a course that a lot of the students get a lot out of. I think also what's been the most surprising to me as I teach is things that I feel are so common knowledge, which when I really think about it, they're not, because I had to learn the hard way. Everyone's lucking out that I'm telling them how to do it the easy way. I mean, I learned through trial and error. But things that I think, oh my gosh, they're definitely going to know this, they never know, which is so crazy to me. Just a lot of the business stuff. I mean, I don't want to say it's easy to book your own tours, but I think everybody always feels that you need somebody to do it for you. You need someone to sign you. You need some agent to get you into Germany or do this and that. I think what people don't realize is that you could do it all yourself. I built my business from scratch, and I built my business because I was different as an Italian New Yorker that wanted to do country music, and no one wanted to work with me. So I was like, you know what? You don't want to work with me? I'm going to show you, and I'm going to do it myself. And I think that people forget that you have that power, to do whatever you want to do. And I think that's one of the most powerful lessons that the course teaches. You don't have to wait for a knight in shining armor. You don't have to wait for someone to come and save you or show you the way. You build your own way.
It's amazing how much of an impediment to music industry success it is for so many creators that they have to be able to identify that, like, you don't need to, you don't need to wait for permission. So many of the things that you want to do, you just do. And, the things that you think it's too early for it, I'm not 100% ready for it yet, you just do it. And, maybe it doesn't work out, but, a lot of times you're going to open a lot more doors for yourself by not waiting for somebody to open those doors for you. And, I never thought of that philosophy applying to like somebody in the US booking a gig for themselves in Germany. I mean, let's go back to that. Like how, for somebody who's never even set foot in Germany, how do you book a gig in Germany without an agent? Like, are you just calling random, beer houses and seeing if anybody will have you play?
So basically, it really is just as easy as being a good note keeper, being organized, and being able to do good research. And maybe that comes from me being a lot of musicians, I feel, and creatives don't also have a good business mind. I'm very lucky that I have both. I was always amazing in school. Like, I'm a true nerd. I mean, honors college, straight A. It's quite embarrassing, actually, how much of a nerd I actually am. But so basically, I applied all of my studying techniques and the hard work that I always gave to what I did in school to being a musician. And really, I mean, it truly is as easy as my first year touring Europe. I looked up country music festivals in Germany. I took impeccable notes of where they were and contacts and all this stuff. And you just start selling it. Obviously, I had to learn how to create all the booking documents and what to do. And then doing the logistics and things for something like that is a whole nother ball game, which my course also teaches. But it's really been a really interesting journey, and I've learned so much, and it's really special for me to get to share that with people and also watch them succeed. It is so special.
I can imagine that's I mean, maybe this is just a product of like the federal government not doing a good enough job of like tooting their own horn about the stuff they do. I had no idea that a program like this exists, right? I think of the US State Department and I think of like brokering, nuclear treaties and things like that. I don't think of Jessica Lynn like traveling the world talking to people about how to book more gigs, which seems like a really awesome thing for us to be doing if we're trying to spread American goodwill throughout the world. But just so cool that you're involved with that. And I can tell just by looking at the smile on your face how much gratification you get out of being able to do this amazing work, whether it's, this course you teach or the work that you do for the soldiers or for the veterans or things like that. I imagine, Jessica, that there are viewers and listeners that are creators themselves who are listening to this and are thinking, I want to get involved in this kind of stuff. I want to use my art, use my talent as a force for giving back. I want to help the soldiers. I want to help veterans. Maybe I want to, do some stuff with the State Department. What advice would you give them on getting started? How do you get into this world?
You just have to do it. As cliche as that sounds, I never knew what I was doing. I would just kind of dive in and give it my best. And really nothing bad ever happens by just trying, right? So nobody knows how to do anything until you try it for the first time. And I mean, I'm telling you, I was flying by the seat of my pants. The music industry is no different from being an entrepreneur in any other field. Obviously, your battlefield is different, I'll call it, but everything is the same. Bad business deals. Which path do I take? Which deal do I take? What do I invest in? Spotify? Do I invest in regular radio? I mean, it's all the same thing. There's 1,000,001 business decisions that you have to make on a daily basis when you are a music entrepreneur of any kind. And I think people forget that. And I think a lot of times creative people don't even think about that. They're so caught up in just making their art that they forget how to get it out there into the world, which I think is why my course has been so well received amongst the students, because they've all said, we've taken courses before and they've taught me how to be a better songwriter, or they taught me how to be a better performer, but they never showed me how to get out of my bedroom.
Like there's no shortage of courses that will teach you the creative stuff, but the courses that teach you just like the good solid business principles that help you, with the marketing stuff, with the promotion, creating a good online presence for yourself, boosting your social media and things like that. Not enough good content out there, particularly I imagine if you live in countries in the world where there's not as easy access to this education as we have here in the US of A. So you're really filling a need, which I think is fantastic. All right. You have been such a good sport with us, Jessica, talking to us about your service work. And I do want to talk to you about the art that you're making. Tell us about the new album, All I Own. What can the listeners expect from it?
I'm really excited about this record because it's very authentically me. As I said, my roots are very rock and roll. The record is very rock and roll. I have a few co-writers on the record that I absolutely love. It's just music I really enjoy making. And I think that's also a lesson I have learned. This year, it's crazy to say, was my 10th year touring. And I didn't even realize it until we got off the road. We've been on the road since May. We got home on January 2nd. So it's been a long, long time. But it was a labor of love. It was a difficult year for me in a lot of ways. I had some health issues that I was recording the record through all of that happening. So there's a lot of extra passion and drive in this album, and I'm just really excited for people to hear it.
And we're really excited for you that you were able to bring this into the world, even with everything else you've had going on. You seem like you have a pretty busy schedule, and the fact that you found the time to make such a great album, thank goodness, because that's good news for all of us who get to enjoy it.
Thanks.
So Jessica, I do want to make just like a little pitch here for the Break the Business family. I think that what you're doing with the State Department and, with this course that you do around the world and giving tips to, people who aspire to the same kind of things that you're doing is awesome. If there's anything we can do around here to help, I know I'm sure I can speak for Mark and Alexandra as well, who I know are listening to this and think that what you're doing is really cool. If there's anything that like us lawyer nerds can do to help with this course or to help you, let us know. All right. This is I honestly think what you're doing here is really cool. And I love the idea of the knowledge that you have and that we have getting to be a force for good around the world. That's so gratifying. And ever anything you need, please don't hesitate to reach out.
That means so much. It really is. It's hard to explain because it is such an incredible feeling that you just have to feel when you're with these kids. But I just got back from Asia working with a bunch of kids, and I leave for Africa in 2 weeks, which I'm really excited about.
Man.
But it's to see them succeed and have this knowledge is something. I mean, I get so much joy out of performing. Music is the love of my life, but to add this layer to it, it is nothing makes me as proud as watching. I mean, I'm still friends with all the kids, I'll call them the students, on Instagram, and I see them, or I'll get a message. I booked my first big gig with your contract that you gave me. Like, thank you so much. And then I see them posting the pictures from it. My heart's just exploding out of my chest. And it's just, that's what life's about, right? Doing stuff that makes you feel good and that makes a difference.
I'm blown away by that. One of the themes that I think a lot about when people ask me, why should I be independent as an artist? Ryan, you've spent 10 years hosting this program, telling artists why they should keep their independence, why they should be able to control their own destiny in their careers. And they ask me why. Why is this something that you think is so valuable? And I can talk at length about the legal pitfalls that are very much there in like a major record deal, or if you're working with some manager who's going to control every aspect of your career and all the contractual dangers that are out there. But really what it comes down to it for me, Jessica, when I say, when people ask me why be independent, it's the ability to define success in your own way and to chart a path for yourself that doesn't have to be the cookie cutter rock star path that, we associate with the artists that we love. But for every artist, their definition of success, their story of success can be different. It can be the traditional artist path, or it can be Jessica Lynn, who's not only doing amazing things as a performer, but she also gets to be a teacher, a diplomat, a veterans advocate, all of which she's able to do because of her art, because of her skill, and most importantly, because she has full control over what she gets to do as a creative and as an entrepreneur. To me, Jessica, you are like one of the best examples I've heard in a long time of this really great rise of independent creatives that we have in the industry and what we can do with it. So,
Thanks
I
so
love
much.
it.
That means a lot. It's so funny to hear you say that because I say that to my students all the time. I say being successful in the music business does not mean that you have to be Taylor Swift. There's a million and one jobs within this industry that you will feel totally fulfilled making your art with. I'm not a Taylor Swift level. I make an incredibly comfortable living doing what I'm doing. You could be a wedding singer. You could be an educator. You could do corporate events and be bringing in thousands of dollars a night as a musician or a singer. You could, work with the government. You could do a social media influencer. I work so much as an influencer, like you said, all because I've built a brand based upon my music and my art that has led me down all different roads that are possible when you're an artist or you're a musician that people just don't think about. They can be so narrow-minded about what that success looks like.
Oh, congratulations on that success, Jessica. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting jessicalynnmusic.org. Jessica, before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Yes, as cliche as it sounds, be yourself. I have gotten where I am in this business because I was myself. And I'm not just saying that. Doors have opened for me that I never thought would have opened, and they never would have opened if I had listened to advice to change the way I sounded or the way I looked, which, believe me, I got many, many, many times over. And your life is what you make it. And I'm a big advocate for that and a big believer in that. And I hope I can be an inspiration for that. Just keep going, be authentically you, because every night when you go to sleep, you want to be happy with the life that you're living, with the person that you are, with the career that you have chosen. And you will never be totally happy with that if you are living a life that is not authentic to what you genuinely are.
Well said. Jessica, this has been a thrill. Thank you so much for your time. Don't be a
Same.
stranger, okay? We'd love to have you on again real soon. You know, in between
Thanks.
your transatlantic and Pacific flights, if you want to come back and just let us keep tabs on what you're doing, we'd love that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was such a pleasure being here with you.
Right on. Our thanks to Jessica Lynn. Our thanks to Alexandra Roberts and Mark Jaffe. Our thanks to producer Lauren. And of course, our thanks to all of our viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.